Hey guys, welcome back. Today we'll be talking about tools in Windows and panels. I won't cover every tool or window, rather I'll talk about the ones that I use most often. Again, this is not the best one approach to making animations, but it's the format that I use. So with that out of the way, let's get started. So I'm going to go over here and select ActionScript 3.0 on my professional CC version of Flash. If you got an older version, you probably want to use ActionScript 2.0 or less if you're even farther back. Okay, so this is how I organize my workstation, I guess you could say. So I got these panels, and I can reorganize them in lots of different ways. I can like move this one over here and rearrange the order of these as much as I want. So, um, there we go. Okay. Um, so if you want to disconnect it from here, I can click on the name, left click, hold, drag it somewhere else, and now it's disconnected from where it was. Yep. So if I wanted to put it back, I would simply just drag it, and when it's blue, let go, and it'll come back. But let's say that you accidentally lose this by hitting the X right here. And you say, how do I get it back? We would go back up to here, window on PC. That'll be where it is. It's on Mac, it'll probably be above the actual Flash box, whatever. And then we go down here and we want scene. And here it is. And if we want to drag it back, click on the name and drag it till it's blue, and it's back. And reorganize it. Okay. Now I'm gonna do that, and let's move on. Okay, so this is where I'll find all my tools. I think I had it like here before. I think that's where it starts you with Flash. I'm not sure. I know of other Adobe products would have it here, but with the same thing, we can hold here, yeah, and then drag it into the middle, and then you can do it in one motion, but I like to safely do it. And then from here, you can simply drag here and lift it back up to there. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over every tool up here and what to use for, and get that back. Okay, this is V. Okay, so for V or selection tool, I don't use this one very often, almost not at all. I didn't even know it was here that much, really honestly. And then A or sub-selection tool. I use this actually quite often. This allows you to select individual points of a shape. I'm going to use the oval tool again. You saw. Um, so here's the fill color, or like the inside color of what the shape will be, and the outline color will be, and how big it is. Style, more stuff. You don't care. Okay. Circle, shift drag, copy all. We'll go over other tools, but for now, we want to do sub-selection tool A. And then if I click on the outline, we can see these little points, these little squares, these little white squares. So I can click on it, and I can move it to anywhere I want. And then you see these little handles. I can left click on the handle and rotate that around 360 degrees closer or farther away. So we'll try and experiment with that. That happens. You don't want that. So Control Z and bring it back a couple steps to back where it was. Fit in window, and there we go. Let's see. Yeah, I can do that. Okay. Next, I don't know why I saved it. Let's get back out. Okay, delete it. Okay. Is the transformation tool, which I already have selected, and that's Q for a shortcut, keyboard shortcut, whatever you want to call. Let's get back to that circle. And I'm using free transform tool again. I just probably see me playing with all this stuff. So with it, shortcut Q, I can modify this shape in several ways. I can select it as I have been and drag the whole thing, Control A, because if I just clicked on either the outline or the red fill color, it would act as separate shapes or separate entities or objects or something. But if you overlap them, that happens. So always be sure to that when it says shape, you know if it's a shape if it has this checkerboard type pattern to it. So Control A to select it all. Okay, select it and drag it somewhere else. So just simply drag any of it and move it over. So that's very important. Yep. Or I can rotate it around its pivot point, which is this white circle in the middle. When your cursor is over the shape's corner, it will look like this. A little counterclockwise arrow, right? Okay. And that means I can left click it and left drag it really to rotate it. Can't tell now because it's a circle, so maybe I'll delete that and make a square or rectangle. And if I rotate it, now you can see that it is rotating around this pivot point. So I can also move this pivot point somewhere else, and that affects how it rotates. So if I move it like here and then rotate it, it will move it. It will rotate around the white circle. That makes sense, right? I don't know. Cool. So I can move it outside the shape as well, or anywhere. But I just have to do a huge warning. If I were going to After Effects, I would probably put a huge explosion somewhere, but I don't think I'll have time to do that. But anyway, it's huge warning. When you get to animating, do not move the pivot point between keyframes. Okay. It will mess up any transformations you're doing, but we'll get more into that during puppet building. But just like a simple thing, I can add 2 keyframes. You don't have to know you don't have to know what I'm doing right now. But if I have the pivot point here and a pivot point here and move it and rotate it, you can see that that's not smooth because it goes from here to over there in one frame, and that's not the arc that it's doing. So do not move the pivot point between keyframes. Okay. Let me just erase everything but the first frame, as we still want this. And that is now a tween, so I'm going to go right click and break apart, and now it's a shape. And now I can modify the actual art inside it. When it was a tween, if I double clicked inside of shape, inside of the tween, it would become a shape. And then I can modify that. But it's not good. You want to make it a symbol first, and then do all the tweening first. So, okay, that's that. Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to puppet building. We can also change the scale or size of this object, or shape, as it is now, shape. To do that, select all, Control A, and we'll go over a corner here. When it's like a line with 2 arrows, we can left click on it and That was weird. Okay. Anyway, that's weird exposure. Yeah. Bandicam only wanted 10 minutes, so now I know that. Okay, I was saying something about scale. So I can left click on the corner when it has that arrow and it'll change the width and height stuff. And because we rotated it, it's not a straight square. So if we delete this and make a new rectangle and then scale it, it'll be more straight. Okay. Yep. Okay. Oh, and if we wanted to make it even, because right now it's not a square. Like if I wanted this to be a square and then a bigger square, I would first have to make it a square by left clicking, left dragging, and holding shift while drawing it. Then release the left mouse and then the shift, and then Q, Control A, move it. And now we can, if we don't hold shift while we're doing this, it'll still be like that. Control Z, hold shift, left click, hold. Now if we go left and right, we can see that it's still the same. It's the same dimensions of width and height. These are the same. So if we even make these similar, it also change that automatically. So that comes important later as well. These are just super simple things that you have to know. Okay. We can also skewing the shape to make it look like it's more in perspective. So if we highlight an edge, we can see that we get this really cool symbol thing. And if we left click, we will skew this shape. We could do this on every side, but because it's only a two-sided shape, 2 dimensions, we can only do it in 2 ways. But we can also see that it moves the bottom edge as I move the top edge. So if we only wanted to move the top edge but keep the bottom edge locked, Control Z, we would hold Shift or Alt. Let's see. Okay. Nope. Yeah, it's Alt. Okay. It's Alt or Command or whatever on Mac. And we can see that it'll lock the bottom edge. Yeah. And if we do that, if we do it on the other side, it'll lock the opposite side. Let's see what Shift does. Shift does nothing. Okay, good to know. Looks like that's that for that, so we don't need the square anymore for our next thing, which will not be these two. It'll be, looks like a pen tool, but pen's just making lines, and I don't use this at all either. Control A, delete. Okay. Go back to free transform tool. Free transform tool or Q will be your base back to normal button. When just like trying to, if you're in some weird tool and you want to get back out, I just always go back to free transform tool. Don't need that, and I don't use lasso that often, but I should. Might be a little easier, but I don't use it. Next is the text tool. Okay, let's see what to say about that. Shortcut is T. Yeah, okay. Here we have a lot of different properties to mess around in. There's a bit too much to cover in this video, but the basics are to left drag to create a text box, however long you want it. So let's keep it pretty big. Now we can type whatever we want. Slam. Okay. And to exit this, because we're still in type mode, we will have to just left click outside of this box. And still, you can see that we're still in text. The little cursor is still making a text box. So we can go back to free transform tool. So now we can treat this text as we did with the rectangle, and we can still do all the crazy transforms. And here's our pivot tool, pivot dot, I don't know what it's called. We can still do the same thing in like scale and stuff. But if we don't want this to be so long, we can double click inside, and the top right corner will have this white square which we can drag in and just to make it smaller or bigger. Left click out, free transform tool, and we can select it, and it's much more manageable in case we click anything else. We can also change color here, blue. So now it's a blue splamp, and I can rotate it under, and yeah, there's a whole bunch other stuff. Again, you can import your own text, so I can do like this one I found online, and some other crazy stuff. All these other stuff filters and other stuff that you can experiment on your own. Yeah. Looks like that's about that for that. So we will get rid of our slant there. And the next on the list after text will be this line tool. And this will be your friend for just about the rest of this tutorial. And it's pretty simple with our properties here. We've got line color, stroke color, and how thick we want the stroke to be. We can see if it's, we can go to 0.10, left click to start and drag it somewhere and release, it makes a line. And if we bring this up by up button, up arrow, whatever it's called, bring it up to 5, enter, left drag, release, and we can see that the stroke value bigger makes it thicker. Okay. So yeah, line shortcut is N. Allows you to draw straight lines. And if we go back to our sub selection tool A and click on it, we can see that we got the squares again here, and we can do the same thing. And if we click in Q free transform tool, using arrow keys to move this around, and if we click here, we can see that the cursor now has different picture icon, and that means that we are able to make this straight line a curve. So I'm going to left drag, and I can move it in 360 degrees, how far and short we want it. Let's move it over here, about like that. Okay. So now if we go back to this button, A, and click on an edge, we now have these handles. And we can also do these the same way. We can also make this an S, which in turn was originally a straight line. So this could become really useful when building stuff. You can also go over itself, which we might do. Let's go back to 0.10, just type it in, click on the edge of it, and if it's on snap to objects, it'll automatically snap easier. You can also see that kind of is snapping to it. Click here, and now I can click here in different points, switch between different tools, switch between A. That scares me every time. Okay. I just have to watch the clock a little more closer, I guess. But anyway, I got this now, and if it is closed, you can tell by if we use the paint bucket tool that we get to later also, and click, and it'll fill in that shape. But for now, let's forget about that. And we talked about the rectangle tool, the oval tool. Oh yeah, if you hold here, you can also get more objects, but we don't ever use primitive tools as they make objects that are not modifiable. Yeah, that's about it that I can say about that. Same with primitive tool. Next one is a polystar tool, which is pretty cool. It's got a different button down here. Let's make one. Left click drag, same way. Release, and we get the fill color in. And if we go to options here, we got this cool box here, and it will say style. We can either make a polygon like this pentagon here, or a star. So we can make a star. Let's see. I think that's good. And if we do that, it makes a typical cartoony style star. Yeah. And we can also change that if you wanted to like a 8-pointed star or something and drag it out, and it has more 8 points. These are also shapes, which are the same way as lines, rectangles, and other stuff where we can drag. Modify the edges and points to any direction by using the free transform tool again. So I can also change this almost into another star if we do that. They're similar. And also the same way you can use the sub selection tool, which adds the handles for more precision and to make other ways to make S curves like that. Okay, that's the polystar. Control All and delete. Pencil tool, we don't use that often. Brush tool, yes, this will be very important. Brush tool is as easy as left dragging and drawing a line, and that's it. And if we wanted to make a shape out of this, we can left drag on the edge, same way as the lines I showed you, and then paint bucket tool a different color, like green. And if it is, yep. And if it's a closed area, we can fill it in. We can also get rid of the brush tool, the brush strokes that we did, and only get the fill color. And if you don't want it this jagged, we go back to brush B and smoothing, which is at 0. Get it up to 100, and we can see that now it's more smooth than when it was 0. Okay. We'll be using this a lot for like parts of backgrounds and props and stuff when we don't want to use the line tool to make all these. Because a lot of pony backgrounds have decorations that kind of look something like that. And if you want to use the line tool to go around and kind of trace around it, it's very hard. It's a very delicate curve, and to make it with straight lines is tedious and frustrating. So I just tend to use the brush tool for swirls. Okay, but we'll get to that when we get into backgrounds. If I do. I'm hoping for it. I think with this new recording thing, I think it should be more smooth than it was before. Because my last one broke after like a couple hours. So we'll see. This one, ink bottle tool. We don't talk about this. Eyedropper tool. Eyedropper tool is a very good one. So if we got, I'll just make something quick by getting rid of that and making a fill color cool. Go to my color window, make it a linear gradient. Now if I wanted like one of these values here of gray, I can eyedropper tool I shortcut, left click, just one single click, and now I got that whole gradient as like a swatch, I guess. So if I make another rectangle, okay, that was weird. I don't know why I did that. That was stupid. Okay, make another rectangle that has nothing in it. Then if I K linear gradient tab, that's not working. Anyway, it works better with pictures than like a gradient. This was a PNG. I could take a single pixel hexadecimal value and then make the other shape this color. Or I could do it this way, kinda. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that's how it works. Okay. So if I had, so what I did there was keystrokes are important. I use the eyedropper tool, left click to steal this red color tool, the red color. Go over to here and just left click again, and it matches the same color. There we go. Okay. That's how it works. Okay. Eyedropper and eraser. So if I get back to this, eraser tool E, and you can see properties, no properties for it. Oh, because there's one of these. Yes, this is where this little square here is how big or what shape it is. So you might want it smaller, and then simply left drag, and you can erase shapes. But if I make this a symbol, which we'll get to later, red box. If I use E to erase it, it will not, because this is a different type of object than this shape. It also becomes two different shapes that also can be sub-selected and with a whole bunch of little dots here of points that can be moved around. There's so many that it's actually lagging my computer a bunch. So let's get out of that. So rule of thumb is not to use this many dots or points like in a square. This square would have, if we break it apart, make it a shape, this point would have 4 corners or edges. Corner, I don't know what it's called. The things where you can change your angle to things. And this would have a bunch. Because it's... Whoa. Anyway, let's get rid of that. Don't save. We don't need to save. This looks like a flower, but we don't use that. Hand tool is good for when you're zoomed in. Go over here. Let's zoom in a bunch. Let's get a thing out here first so we can zoom into. So now we're zoomed in 400%, or we could do a normal 400% there. And then we could use the hand tool, which is the, let's H, to, you can also press spacebar. Hold spacebar and then you can drag around the screen. So you're not moving the stuff inside of the screen, you're just panning around the screen without damaging anything inside. So if we go back to that, it's kind of like just looking through a little telescope without touching anything. So let's keep that there. And then magnify tool is the same. We can press Z, and then we can highlight an area, left drag to zoom in right into that amount of space that we zoomed in. We can zoom in to about 2000%. That's not even on there. That's it. Okay. That just scares me so much. Okay, so 2000% is as far as you can zoom into. So we can go back up to here. Show frame is pretty good for when you do want to move around the screen at the same size as all your windows are not taking up, I guess. And show all shows all of your stuff, I guess. Fit to window, it's good, but you can't use the hand tool to pan around. So if you want to show frame, keeps the same shape, same size stage, but you can move it around. So if you want to lock in place, use fit to window, and it just happens to be 62% for my particular setup. This is a quicker way to choose a swatch color for outline color. You can go here, just to pick a color. We can also talk about properties, whole bunch of stuff here. How many frames per second? YouTube has unlocked, I guess, 60 frames per second animations in videos, but it's like if you're used to 24%, 24 frames per second, it's doesn't really affect you too much unless you want to get in that curve, but it's like most video in cartoons are set in 24 frames per second, so it doesn't add too much, I think. This is how big your stage canvas size is. 1920 by 1080. That's how many pixels it is. You can set this if you're not doing an animation. You can set this to something else, make it like a brochure, whatever you want. I don't know what you want. So this first number will be how many pixels wide it is, and then 1080 is how many pixels down or tall it is. You can also set the stage color itself. So, for example, if you had a bunch of ghosts without outlines that were white, you don't want to. It's very hard to see the ghost if there was no background. So you might want to change this to any color you got here. If you click OK, it'll change it. But for now, let's change it back to white. Oh, and the stage color will not render in the final, I think. But it's always good to have a background. You can always just make a new layer and make this square the background. Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that. Okay. Library that we see here. Let's move that over. And we can see that we got the tween that we made earlier and a second tween. So let's say I don't want these to be in my library. I will go to trash box, trash can thingy, and say delete. And select the other one and delete. So everything that you make that it's not a shape, anything that you import, pictures, GIFs, stuff, objects, groups, folders. You can make folders in here. Folder. You can drag your symbol, graphic, movie clip, button into here. And if you want to see it, you click the little triangle button to expand it, and you can drag it out if you want. And delete that folder. You can also, if you have too many things, you can search for it in here, and it found the red box. Okay. And if you have multiple windows or files open, you can click here, and there'll be a list of all your tabs of different files that you have already open inside of here. And so that's helpful if you have a graphic, movie clip, button, whatever, inside of another file, and you want to easily access it in here, and you can search for it and then drag it into another file that you have. So that's how that works. Scenes. So let's say if I put the red box here, and then I have animation frames, it won't do anything. But if I add another scene by going down here, add scene, now I have scene 2, and the red box is gone, but I can have more time here. So that's how that works. That's how I work. I usually have each scene as another scene, I guess. So anytime the camera changes or I'm in a different place, I can make another scene, and when you export it, it will go through the list downward. So this will be the start and this will be the ending. So I'll get rid of that. And it will say, yeah, that's fine. That, and that's how that works. Color. This will get kind of confusing, but it's pretty simple. So let's say we select it, let's go inside it. So now scene 1, red box, is where I am. And I can change the color instantly there. I can change the saturation from pure that color to white. It's got some blue here, or blue, I don't know what it is. Hue. These are different styles of picking colors, different organizations of how to display them. Where you can get really technical and change, like I want to change how much red, green, or blue is in this particular color. So you can see kind of like makes a parabola kind of going on. So I want like a teal color or something. Maybe like in here, and keep changing and modify it until I get it perfect. And if you ever get like a reference picture for like a pony, and it was like a color reference, it might say this is the number is this funny code. If it's copyable, you can copy that that color code that we have here and paste it in, and if you highlight this, it will automatically choose that color to change into this color, I guess. Single color, we talked about gradients. Highlight it, linear gradient, we'll change this. Click on this little thing here, and if we lift it up, we get all the colors again. Change this, give it to like red or something, and then it'll figure out automatically what color is in the middle between the two colors. And if we zoom in, we can see that. If it's wider, it'll look a little more smoother. And if you want it to be more blue on this side, you can press K, which is paint bucket tool. It will unhighlight lock fill, as we don't want it to be locked. And gap size, in case this was, if I made a circle here, but I almost just barely didn't close it. Let's change color back to red. And I wanted to make it blue inside. This gap should not fill. Keep clicking, left clicking, but it's not. So if I click here, I can change how big it will tolerate to make it close. It's very complicated. I don't know how to explain it, but either way, you both probably want it to be large gap, and then if you click it, it should fill in, even though there is space between these 2 points. So I get rid of that. It might look a little jagged, so you might want to just try your best to close shapes when you're doing it. And that's going to run out now. Okay, I was right. Okay, cool. And we got this, and we're gonna go over to K, and we don't close this, do that, and zoom out a bit to show I want it to be blue more on the right. I left drag. We're still on that. What's going on? It's going back to solid color for some reason. We go. Let's do that. Okay, so that was weird. But if we keep holding, we're dragging, we're left clicking, holding it, and the more that we drag it over, the more spread out the gradient is. So I bring it back. You can see I can also rotate it a bit in any way, any angle that I want. It should be red, but it's not. That's fine. So keep experimenting until it looks right to you. There's also different ways. This is more. I've never done that. Cool. Different ways to figure that out. More options to play with. Probably won't get into too many of these, but it's nice to know that they're there and are here for you. And last but not least, we will talk about transform tools. Free transform tool. Zoom in a bit. You can see that I can change a whole bunch of these, rotate, skew in here. And the one that I like to use, probably the most out of why I chose to put this as one of my favorite windows here, are the flip horizontally. That's what this not a square. Flip horizontally and flip vertically. It's not really showing because it's not a real thing here. So let's try putting that at an angle, and then we can see that it is flipping in both ways. And that's about that. It's pretty basic, but we'll get into more complicated stuff in a bit. So, hope you learned something, and if you have any more questions, don't forget to ask that in the comments below. I think that's about it for now. So, till next time, I'll see you later.